Okay, hi guys. Do other guys have other engagements away and this and that? So I'm having a bit of a Sunday braai on my own. Yes, I spent a lot of time thinking about the matches yesterday. Quite astonishing that in the first round of the July Rugby Internationals, the Southern Hemisphere teams won all the games, and in the second round, all the Northern Hemisphere teams won all the games. So the Wales won, and Ireland won, England won, and Scotland also beat Argentina late last night. So what's very cool about that is that everything's going to a decider now. So all the matches will be decided by the final game. So there are no dead rubbers. So that makes it really cool for the third games. Obviously, France beat Japan twice in a row, but it seems like Japan put up a much better show in the second game. I watched the Ireland-New Zealand game first. I have to say that the three games that I watched intently, Ireland, New Zealand, Wales against South Africa against the Springboks, and Australia, England, none of them were great rugby matches. It was a lot of stop-starts, a lot of mistakes. I'm going to start with Ireland. So Ireland started really, really well, the same as they did last week, and they managed to play the rugby that they've become known for, is to work a lot of phases and be very precise and patient. And then they scored a try early on. But then it seemed like they became a little bit impatient, and they couldn't get through. And they tried a few silly passes. I think there was a time when the ball was even passed over the line for a line out, and so on and so forth. And they kept making mistakes, or they kept losing the ball, and they should have actually been further ahead in the first half. But then there was a yellow card, which is a difficult one, because it was a kick by the Irish winger Mac Hansen, and the guy tried to charge down, and when he came down, he made contact with him, and it was deemed a late tackle. But that's the way the rules are going. So you have to think before you actually go for the charge down, in case something like that happens. So the New Zealand winger got a yellow card, which already changed the game a little bit. And then after that, there was a red card as well for the New Zealand prop for a tackle, a head collision, which initially they thought that the outside centre, I think it's Ringrose, he changed direction quickly, but actually you can see the New Zealand players sort of preparing for the tackle and actually then making the head collision. So that's something that you completely have to get out of the game. Back in the day, it used to be deemed an accident, but nowadays you have to say it's fair, because you can get seriously injured, and both players were actually down, and injuries do come from that, especially concussion. And then there was a bit of confusion with the technicality with Ardie Savia because of the uncontested scrums and having to take Ardie Savia off and put a prop on in order to scrum. They actually didn't have enough players on the field, and Ardie Savia had to stay off the field. And he's one of New Zealand's best players. And a lot of what they do is around him, as it is with any eighth man. Eighth man is a very important part of your game plan. It's often a fetcher, it's a big ball carrier, it's also a line-out option, all those things. So Ardie Savia had to stay off the field. He didn't have another option, which was disrupted for New Zealand, and they just could not get into the game. There were moments where you saw the real New Zealand style, which is in my mind mainly based upon skill and playing what you see in front of you, keeping the ball alive and just beating players man for man by pure pace and skill. And they showed glimpses of that. There was a very important moment with the ankle tap on Geordie Barrett, where it looked like he was through. And other pundits and other TV shows and so forth also mentioned that sort of almost changed the game, because if they scored from there, it could have been a little bit of a different game. But they struggled with the possession. They tried to get the ball to the wing as much as possible, and then subsequently made a lot of mistakes. And obviously after the red card with 14 men, it was very difficult to get into the game. Half-time score, there was New Zealand did eventually score a try and made it 10-7. But Ireland came out well again in the second half, and it was quickly 17-10, more or less the same. Built the phase as well, kept the ball for long. They were more patient and scored a try. But the Irish defended extremely well all through the game, and mistakes cost New Zealand ultimately, and they just couldn't get that real style of New Zealand play going for long enough, where they can literally score from anything, like I said, with pure pace and skill. Like, all the players in the New Zealand team are skillful enough to shift the ball with good passes and to trust their skill and beat players one-on-one, but it just didn't happen enough. It was just a difficult day out for them. So Ireland, in the end, easily won the game, but it seems like there's something wrong in the All Black camp, if I have to be honest, that there's not that 100% trust in the coach and in each other, in the players, because when they do gel and when things are going well for the All Blacks, we know that they are almost unbeatable. And they showed that last week, but it does seem as if they let themselves down every now and then, and that there's a shake-up coming in the future, possibly a new coach. If I have to predict, maybe next year, this whole system of bringing in the assistant coach to take over from the coach, as it happened with when Hansen retired, doesn't seem to be working at the moment. So there might be a change coming as far as that is concerned. But it was a great victory for Ireland. They absolutely deserved the win, and they are one of the form teams in the world at the moment. And then, of course, I watched the England-Australia match, which England came out immediately and just outplayed Australia from the beginning. They were actually more patient, if you could say so, than Ireland, and they kept the ball for a lot of phases. They took their penalties, kicked their penalties at the right time, scored a couple of good tries, and it was also a convincing win. Australia came back well. That was actually quite a good match, probably the best match of the three that I sat down and watched properly, because Australia came back, and I actually thought that they had a chance of winning the game, but a few penalties by Owen Farrell clinched the victory for England in the end. And also a very, very good comeback after last week. They came back so well, and they played well, and they did the basics well. Billy Vunipola and his brother Marco carried very well when they came on. When Marco came on in the second half, he also carried very well. They kept on getting over the advantage line. Jack Nowell looked very good. A couple of guys looked good for Australia. They had a lot of injuries in the game. A couple of serious knee injuries, very disruptive. Lots of guys going off with injuries, with what looked like serious injuries. So for them, it was also a difficult game, not because of cards necessarily, but this time because of injuries. And then the controversy around the Boks and Wales. It was also a bit of a weird game. Not going to carry on about the ref. Apparently, that's all we do. The things that I don't understand. What you see in these games, like at the very first ruck, Pieter-Steph du Toit put his hands over the ball and he penalised us for it. And at the kickoff, the Welsh did exactly the same, and he did not penalise them. And I looked out for that, and for the rest of the game, it happened a lot that guys often put their hands over the ruck to seal off the ball. And if you're going to make a brave call like that, you've got to stick to it. If you're going to do that, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. And it's the same with line-out throws. You see a skew throw, and then you see it happen all the time after that, and it gets left out. Nothing happens, you know. And they mentioned that as well in the Ireland All Blacks game, or that it also happened. I think it was Australia England. Can't remember who the referee was, but the same thing sort of started happening where they say no, that's it's skew, and then there's a line out immediately after that, and then they say it's fine, play on, this and that. So we just want that consistency in calls. You just want the same calls all the time. And there were a few decisions for both teams. I think Alan Wynne-Jones didn't even touch the ball and he got a yellow card. So I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that the Springboks would have won the game. I'm just saying that the standard of refereeing is not as good as it should be at the moment, I don't think. I think there are very few really, really good refs out there at the moment. But the Boks... it was a thrown together team, and you could see it. There was no continuity. The guys who normally know where the pass is going to go and who's on their shoulder and this and that, it just didn't happen. The Drebas struggled with the line-outs. They struggled in the scrums when the debutant Mchunu came on. He also completely turned his shoulder in a scrum. There are no combinations. I mean, Pollard actually took the line on more. He carried more than usual, but he would know where De Allende is on his shoulder, and him and Esterhuizen never played together, so there wasn't that combination. Jesse Creel tried hard, but then there were no offloads. There were no quick passes to the wing because these players have never played together. And it's in the press all the time now about what is the reasoning behind it? And a lot of people are very angry about the team selection and why there was this supposed B team being picked. But ultimately, we need to trust what our coaches do. If we believe in them, they won the World Cup for the Springboks. We need to believe in them and trust what they do. But you also do not want to belittle the Springbok emblem and just pick whoever and then lose for the first time in our history against Wales at home, because that stays on your record forever. And it won't be the record, the history won't say no, but it was a B team and this and that. It's just a loss. It's lost to Wales at home, and it's something that we don't want. We want to win all our games. So maybe instead of making 14 changes, he could have made 5 or 6 or 7 changes and not go with this complete B team. But yeah, maybe share with the public what was the reasoning for it. He initially said he would like to play all 42 players. But why? Why do you want to play all 42 players? You know, obviously he's going to pick a different team now for the last test. Maybe a combination, the guys who really put up their hands in this match, which I don't know who really did. I mean, Dion Fourie was good when he came on. The Ruiz carry as well, but you don't see an offload from him, and you see knock-ons. Arendse tried really hard, but he couldn't make anything happen because there's no combination, there's no communication. He doesn't have his Bulls partner there that he plays with. Galant tries to create things from the back, but then he runs across field and he gives a terrible pass and he gives aimless kicks. So there were moments where Galant really sparked the attack, but the final pass didn't go because he has never played with those players before. So it looked disjointed. And Wales didn't play particularly well either. If you think that they played a B team and they won by 1 point. But when it really mattered, the Springboks started conceding penalties. And when it became 12-6, I said, here we go. If they get a penalty now, close, and they get a try, then obviously it's game over. And that's exactly what happened. Because we just couldn't get a foothold in the game, the Springboks. And we couldn't, if they just managed to score one try, if that Joseph Dweba line out just found its jumpers, and there was a maul, I believe that could have been a try, and that could have made the difference. That could have created a bit of daylight, but it didn't. And I think it is a direct result of the selection. And then he took off one of the more experienced guys in Marcel Coetzee and Dweba and Ivan Ruiz off the field at half time, and it looked a little bit different, but the match just couldn't get going. And Wales just had the more patience, more experience, and great for them. I mean, it's a victory away from home against the world champions, and they did extremely well to secure it in the end. I mean, a fairy tale victory, because it's always the best if you score a try on the 77th minute and kick the conversion. And the Springboks did it last week with a penalty, and it's going to be extremely interesting to see the last matches. I watched a little bit of Scotland's game, and they seem to play very, very well. So we've got 4 deciders, and I honestly cannot tell you what's going to happen. I want to strongly believe that the Springboks are going to beat Wales, but Ireland All Blacks, I think, can go either way. England, Australia, the way England played now, you almost want to say England, and you almost want to say Ireland, but I would like to think that the Springboks are going to beat Wales. Argentina, Scotland won convincingly. Maybe it just took the Northern Hemisphere teams a little bit of time to get used to the conditions in the away countries. But great for rugby. I mean, North and South, Northern Hemisphere teams coming to the South and actually winning away from home. The World Cup is next year, and I honestly don't know who's going to be the favourites. I mean, France is world number 1 now, Ireland's number 2, but those rankings can change again with the games next week. Okay, so it's going to be extremely, extremely interesting, and I honestly can't wait to see what happens. Okay, thanks guys. Cheers.